What's up, Zach here, and today I've got the $500 Adidas Adios Pro Evo 1. Let's get into them. Now, a lot of times on this channel, news reviews, I don't discuss cost as much because it's more performance, but in a case like this, it really has to be cost versus performance, what you are getting for what you are paying. And in these ones, $500 for what Adidas considers mainly a 2U shoe, kind of like a warm-up or a kind of a discovery run and then a race, is quite a steep price tag given the options that we have in the super shoe space. So that's why I'm so kind of, laser focused on really, are these worth the money and what is in them? What makes these shoes worth that much money in the minds of the people that are buying them? Now, starting off in the uppers, and as you can probably tell, this is not my shoe size. They just don't have them available in my size. They're constantly sold out. So I was able to get my wife's shoe size in these, and she'll also be the runner. Fear not, she's also a foot doctor, so she also had quite a bit to say about these after putting these through some paces. Now, like I said, starting off in the uppers, you actually do get a reinforced lace line, which I think is incredible. It's very soft felt, but underneath of it, that plastic actually gets pretty hard, that TPU underneath of it. So honestly, the laces are pretty wimpy. These are only meant to be used a few times, and you really can't get a thicker lace through there. So honestly, kudos for actually getting that lace line reinforced the way it is, and you can get a runner's knot in there. I would hope you could. The one thing is, though, the tongue, it actually does have a little bit of padding through the midfoot, which I think is incredible. It's small, but it's right where the laces would cause the irritation. But it is not gusseted. It is only attached at the very distal tip of that lace line. So I know when my wife was trying to get these on, it was kind of a struggle to get the tongue right, get the runners out in there, and kind of get everything laid down. Once she did, it locked down okay, but it took a few minutes to get it to where you'd want to be. Now, going around the ankle collar, speaking of the lockdown on these, the heel slippage was moderate to pretty severe on these. The thing is, they're not meant to be used through a full gait cycle, a full rear foot to forefoot gait cycle. So you're usually kind of tilting these, and just the biomechanics of the way these force you to run, keep your heel in them versus anything that's in the heel counter. And as you can see, the heel counter on these, yeah, I guess it's kind of there, right? It's a really thin piece of just kind of plasticky fabric back here. You can just move it any which way. And like I said, you do have a little bit of light padding back here too. But like I said, because the shoe is so midfoot and forefoot focused, honestly, it was when she was just walking around in them or putting them on that she noticed the heel slippage versus when she was running. She said it just kind of just left her mind because the shoe was forcing you into a position where heel slippage really wasn't an issue. But on the breathability test, this was interesting. These things did heat up 104.1 degrees, which, there's nothing to them. The upper layer, that TPU, as you can see on the microscope on these, it's very simple, it's very thin, very minimal. You can see right through them. Thing is that there is no, removable insole in these, and you're pretty close to all of that Light Strike Pro foam. A lot of times thermoplastic foams can hold on to heat a little bit more. I think that's what was holding on to a little bit more of the heat, because you look at the breathability mapping of them. Fog is just blowing out of this like crazy. These things are, really the only thing that could really hold on to heat in them is the midsole. However, as I say that, if you look at the upper durability test on these things, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, the burr does not get through it, which I think is just incredible. This is actually a much stronger upper material. This, really thin, fine TPU weaving up here is a little bit stronger than it appears. So although I don't think it's holding on to that much heat, like I said, I think it's more, the footbed of these that's holding on to a little more heat. I think it is incredible that the burr, which sometimes has gotten through some pretty thick upper layers, did not get through this almost just like cellophane looking uppers. And honestly, for the cadence you're gonna be going in these, if you are buying them, you're gonna get just so much airflow through these that honestly, the heat dissipation capability of these really pales in comparison to just the general breathability of the uppers, right? Just circulating all that air through there. But getting into the real insanity is the midsole teardown. Now, this thing was tough to tear down. These energy rods are no gimmick. These things are strong. Even just trying to bend the shoe is a struggle when it's, when it's fully intact, and even when it's cut in half, it still has some resistance to you. When my wife was in these, she was saying these things are not bending. They are putting you in the position that this shoe wants you to, especially because these do have that really aggressive forefoot rocker in these. These things really kind of prop you up right into more of a distal midfoot strike. And so with that, you know, this energy rod is always just kind of activating and wanting to push you forward, right? Kristen said it just felt like it was just giving her momentum over and over again. She said it was abnormal because she wasn't used to that sensation. It was almost kind of pushing her over. She said she almost felt like she was going to tip over sometimes. That's how much the shoe was kicking back at her. And so if you look at this on the bounce height test though, only 40 centimeters in the rear foot, 40 in the forefoot. And that's bouncy. Like I said, this is a full bed of Light Strike Pro, the thermoplastic foam. It's just this foam is so lightweight. You've got to sacrifice something somewhere. Some of these thermoplastic foams we're seeing get up into the 44, 45 centimeter range on that bounce height test, whereas in this one, I think you sacrifice a little bit of springiness and bounciness for just how lightweight these are. So when we get into the speed section, get into the speed ratio of these, you'll see that it's the weight of these that's doing it. And basically it's the foam allowing the energy rods to kind of do their job, I think is really what activates this shoe. It's not just a bouncy foam. It's not just like a carbon fiber shank. It's the fact that it's kind of both of them working together. And the interesting thing is those energy rods are not just straight carbon fiber. This is a composite type material. And you can tell on the microscope, you know, you can kind of see it's a composite. And it's just super interesting to see, especially cutting through them, that these are quite a bit stiffer and more resilient than some of the carbon fiber plates I've gotten through. Some of those you can just, you know, kind of put a couple stress risers in, they crack. Whereas in this one, you really had to work for it. But getting into arguably the most interesting part of the Pro Evo 1 is its outsole tread. It's basically just two, you know, razor thin pieces of rubber tape in the rear foot as well as the forefoot. It's really only as thick as the skin of an apple or like the peel of an onion. Look at this on the outsole durability test. I'm going to do this first. The burr just punches right through that as well as into the foam. And you can kind of see on this, just from the little bit of running that my wife did, right? She only had these out twice, what they're supposed to be. That, you know, rubber is already starting to wear down into the foam. So this rubber, yes, it's meant to be light. It's meant to be very gliding and easy to get to the next step, but it also is not meant to take a beating. It is meant for a very economical running gait, right? A tuned gait, an elite gait. And it is meant to not spend much time shearing, right? Those last phases of gait where a lot of, you know, non-elite runners start to shear at the end, right? They get that little twist at the end of their gait. This, if you do that, I don't even know if it lasts you the 2 runs, right? It is meant for a very, very tuned, well-coached gait. What I think is more interesting than the layout of this, you look at the grip test ramp, these things were one of the only different shoes on that grip test ramp. They slipped at 45 degrees, which is, you know, a higher degree of slip than every other shoe I've tested recently on this. But the other edge to that sword is it just wears down so quick that even I noticed from when I first had them till now, they're actually slick now. And I put that again on it, slipped at like 36 degrees, you know, after a little bit, after those couple runs. So yes, the initial tack of it is actually a little higher than you'd think it was, but then immediately it just starts wearing down with the shearing forces that people will put on them. But speaking of all those forces, if you look at the speed ratio of these come in at a 7.42, a shank score of 0.5, one of the only shoes to ever achieve that. Bumps it up to a 7.92. That is the fastest shoe I've ever tested on this channel. It really deserves it for the weight of these and the relative bounce plus the action of those energy rods. Yeah, I think this is the fastest shoe on the market right now. I think you have to be a lighter weight runner to extract that speed. I think someone like me who has a heavier strike, lumbers a lot, is not going to see the benefit of this. A lighter runner that this foam can actually hold up a little bit better and not compress all the way down into Kingdom Come, I think they are going to see, like I said, lightning quick. My wife said that they felt like that she was wearing nothing, but also at the same time, like something was just propulsing her. She said it was the weirdest sensation that there was nothing underfoot, but that there was like this phantom, you know, energy that was just pushing her along. But getting into the fit of these, obviously some of these are estimates based on the fit of this shoe, as well as a couple other people I know that have had them, that have had measure them for me, and I've kind of compared them. Usually when I do that, it is pretty accurate though, but like I said, these are estimates based off of 3 or 4 of these shoes, different people with different sizes of them. Now, what's not an estimate is the inflare in these. They inflare 14 degrees, which is getting up there pretty good. And for a shoe like this, you would expect it to have a little bit of a higher inflare. The toe box taper in these also pretty steep at at 30 degrees. The toe box width only comes in at 9 centimeters for a men's size 11. The width only 8.1 centimeters and the length 28.7 centimeters. So it is more of a streamlined shoe. If you're a narrow medium foot, probably just go true to size on these. A 2E, I probably would try to break these in true to size. You're using them for the weight reduction. You're only going to be in them twice, right? If you're buying them for their intended use, then why not get the performance fit out of them? Like I said, the uppers are so malleable. I mean, and they're like they said, they are protective enough, right? They're strong enough that I think that they will accommodate that. A 4E might be a mismatch on these. Like I said, a 2E you can go up a half size, right? I don't think that that's a problem. You can go up a half size on these. A 4E, just because of the geometry of these, might be a mismatch. You could try to go up one size, but if you're spending that much money on a shoe for those few uses, like I said, we'll talk about in the runnability section. Like I said, it just might not, the juice might not be worth the squeeze. And in terms of the snake bitten foot, I guess I should just do this based on the limited amount of time you're going to be in them. Honestly, I think forefoot pain, heel pain, like I said, these force you onto the balls of your foot, right? They force you into a distal midfoot to forefoot strike. So honestly, for most things are okay. You're not putting an orthotic in these. So I would say they're just as protective as anything else, as long as you're not a very, very heavy runner, right? That wants to heel strike, right? That's just going to opt you out of them. So yes, I think for the time allotted you'll be in them, I think they're protective enough. If you're an ankle sprainer, because of the inflare in them, they're going to be very unstable. So if you're an ankle sprainer, I think that's going to opt out no matter what. But really for anything else protection-wise, those energy rods plus the Light Strike Pro, like I said, as long as you're a lighter runner, I think they're probably okay. Like I said, for the limited amount of time you're going to be in them. After a little bit of time, right after even just a few miles in them, then that statement's going to start to really not ring true. And getting into, the best runners for these, obviously, like I said, and like my wife said, they force you into a distal midfoot to forefoot striking gait. It's really hard to heel strike in these. She was trying and having a really hard time. I mean, remember, these are cut out here on the lateral heel, and you would think, oh, that's great. They're cut out for, an easier flow, easier transition, right? Like some shoes are, because when you strike heel, right, you strike laterally, and then you push off medially onto your big toe. No, it's just cut out for weight reduction, right? Because when you try to heel strike, it comes down. The midfoot in these is really straight, and the forefoot's got the forefoot rocker. The geometry in these just does not allow it. So you really have to be more midfoot. You can be a true midfoot striker. I don't think you're going to get the benefits of this. You really need to be more of a distal midfoot striker to forefoot striker to really get the benefits of these. And really in terms of runnability, I think, like I said, my wife said it best with some of the observations she had that I asked her. On the last run she had them, when I was filming them, I was actually filming them in my rollerblade just to get a better shot, and we were kind of talking about it afterwards. And her and I really kind of came to the same conclusions, me watching her versus just her running in them. And obviously, I was not the one running in these shoes. It was my wife running in them, who is also a foot doctor, so she can actually speak to the performance of them. But was there anything about these, like in your opinion, that made them worth all that extra money versus some of the other super shoes out there that are available for a lot less?
I'd say I was surprised with how flimsy the uppers are. I wasn't really expecting a lot of structure, but there was great structure in this shoe coming through the midsole and the forefoot because of the shank. And I wasn't bothered at all by the flimsy uppers. So I think you are getting a lot of structure with this shoe.
Yeah, and I think that also because there's no heel counter, and a lot of times that completely screws with you, when you're running. Whereas in these ones, like we saw with the cutout here in the rear foot, how this just does not matter. Everything is midfoot and on. So honestly, it seemed like, at least when I was watching you run, you had way more stability in these than I thought you were going to have. And honestly, you seemed more stable in these than in the Alpha Flies, which honestly feel like they have a little bit more stability underfoot and look like they do. But these ones, how these things strike, remember these things do have a forefoot rocker, like we talked about, in the fit and in the midsole section. But I mean, did you really feel unstable with the forefoot rocker, or did you even notice it really?
I didn't feel unstable at all, and I felt like it gave you a lot of momentum
forward. And you were saying, because you're more of a rear foot striker, you were saying I cannot rear foot strike in these. But biggest question, would you let's say for the more elite runners that come into our office that we're normally recommending other shoes for, would these even come up? Is it this, or is it even, I mean, something else like the Prime X Strung or like the Vaporflies, the Alpha Flies?
Yeah, I think if money wasn't an issue, these would be a really fun shoe to try. The downside is, since you only get a couple runs in them, you're not going to get a lot of experience until you're actually out in a race. So that's definitely a downside. But I think overall, I would tell patients to stick with what's been working for them and their current shoe, you know.
I just also think if you read the packaging on these, which I showed, they say they're for the most elite runners. You have to have a sub. I forget what the number was on there, but you know, you have to be running marathons within a certain time really to even qualify to feel the performance of these. My question then is, if you're one of those runners, we all know that usually they have gait coaches, they have running coaches. Their technique is so just fine-tuned, and if they fine-tune it in one geometry of shoe, if then only having one prep time and then a race in this with a little bit more of a steep forefoot rocker, with just how this shoe lands in the mid and forefoot, like, is that really, I don't know, is it even worth it to use them if you can't build up some sort of gait tolerance for them? That would be my biggest concern. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, especially these versus something like the Prime X Strung, the Boston line. I mean, just others in the Adidas line that have a little bit of different geometry. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you do want to see what I'm talking about with the latest Nike Alpha Fly shoe, the Alpha Fly Next Percent 3, if you want to see that one go into the knife as well, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect, your rubber, and foam. You want to sign us off?
What should I say?
You don't even watch my videos. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.
Okay.